Good evening and welcome to tonight's webinar for the Ely Darsten Association. It's our last one before Christmas, so I hope everyone's got their plans all in place, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you in the new year with the webinar sequence restarting on the 14th of January. Okay, back to tonight's session. We're very pleased to welcome back Mark Davies to speak. Before we introduce him, we'll go through the regular housekeeping. It's only going to be the cameras on mine and Mark's computers that are active, and also we're the only people with microphones active, so please do feel free to make yourself comfortable and move around in the full knowledge you're not disturbing any of the proceedings or the other participants. Hopefully you'll find the chat and the Q&A interfaces. They can be found using the buttons at the bottom of the Zoom application. And tonight we have a very special offer from Mark, which is that if there's interest and time at the end of today's session, he's very happy to build a Methodoku live as one of the final events. And if people would like to think of or suggest a method to make a Methodoku from, please do post in the chat, and we can select between the various options that are being proposed. In the interest of time, it will be minor and below only, because obviously we don't really have time to build up a Methodoku for a big complicated surprise Maximus method live on air. So I think that's about it. If you're watching on YouTube, you're obviously very welcome, but unfortunately there's no facility to interact with tonight's session. We can only take chat suggestions and questions from those people in the session. Going back to those on Zoom, if you do have a question, please post it at any time during the session, but we will take all of the questions at the end. So without further ado, I'll ask Mark to come on screen. Good evening.
Hi there, guys.
Wonderful. Thank you very, very much indeed for coming back to do another sequence, another webinar and sequence for the EDA. As I've mentioned, we're so pleased to have your composition workshop earlier in the year. It was fantastic. And if people haven't seen it, I do recommend to catch up with it on our YouTube channel.
No, thanks, David. It's obviously an honour to be invited back, and I couldn't have done too badly last time. So,
indeed, that's wonderful.
No, right. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this webinar, which is going to be not really on the subject of composition, but on Methodoku composition. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how the Methodoku came to be, what is a Methodoku, and how I make them, and a little bit about, I guess, what they mean and why maybe they've become as popular as they seem to be. So I've just got a few slides to share. We've got some practical stuff to look at, and I'm going to be kind of showing you stuff both on my computer screen and on my trusty pen and paper here too. So I'm just going to share to my presentation first of all. Right, okay, so this is obviously a picture of the front cover of the Methodoku Mayhem book, which is out in all good ringing world bookstores now. The story of really how the Methodoku, I mean, how that got started back in spring and how it's got more popular, and how eventually we decided, you know, that we could actually sell some books of it, is partly what I'll be talking about here. So let's see. This is what a Methodoku looks like. Now, I'm guessing that almost all of you, if you're watching this video, probably will have seen them and maybe solved them. This is what they look like, and for any of you who haven't seen them, they're basically a number puzzle, and the way I describe them is really a mashup of Sudoku and bell ringing, because that's really what they are. And as you can see, if you look at this one on the left, Methodoku number 5, as it's labeled, it's a 5-bell method, and that's the first lead of it there, except that quite a few of the bells have been removed, and your job as the puzzle solver is to fill them back in. And there are some rules to follow, a bit like in Sudoku. You know, each line has got to have every number in it, and there's also rules about how the numbers move from one row to the next. You know, you can't do any jump changes. That's the main rule. And you'll see this Methodoku's got an extra rule, no more than 2 blows in one place. So there's only kind of 3 rules, and actually those are quite easy even for non-ringers to understand. And so you don't actually have to be a ringer or know anything about ringing to actually have fun with these puzzles and solve them. And in fact, lots of non-ringers seem to have found them and enjoyed them, which is excellent. The thing that always strikes me as amazing when I look at, you know, particularly ones like this, is that there's so much blank space there. So you look at that one on the left, and okay, the treble part is filled in, but there's only 3 clues of the other bells, of the working bells in the method. And you think, well, there's probably hundreds of methods, isn't there, where, you know, those 3 bells appear at that place in the lead. But that's not the case. It turns out there's only one. And if you know, follow those 3 rules and work it through, you find out that that's true. There is only one. But it's quite a remarkable thing. And and you know, I think I've worked with methods and, you know, analyzed methods and designed methods for many a year. And if you'd had asked me before I started creating these, you know, how many bells would you need to have to uniquely define a method, I'd have guessed a lot more than that. So yeah, we'll have a look at that one in a minute, and I'll show you that it really works. So let's see if I can stop sharing my screen, and I'll come back to my other camera and show you that same Methodoku here. So hopefully you can see it, and I'll prove to you that that really does generate just one method. And when you first start looking at it, it's like, well, where do I start? You know, I've got no idea where any of the other bells are meant to fit here, and there's no clues. But actually, if you look more closely, you'll find there are a few little clues here and there. So the 4 in particular. And I must say, apologies if my webcam is flickering. I've got an old webcam on this view, so MBD is flickering in and out of reality here. So sorry about that. But if we look at this 4, you can see obviously it's going to have to cross with the treble here, isn't it? So I can definitely put the 4 into this position here. So, you know, there's always somewhere where you can make a little bit of progress, and you think, well, that doesn't look like it's going to get me anywhere. But as soon as you've done that, then you can see, well, actually the 4 must go, you know, must stay at the back here, mustn't it? Because there's no way you can follow the treble down, because then there'd be this big gap from this space down to this space, and that's a jump change between those. So you can't have 2 bells following each other, both hunting kind of right next to each other. It doesn't work in normal change ringing. So that means we're forced to put the 4 here. And you know, already it feels like we've begun to sink our teeth in to this. And we can go further with the 4, because with the extra rule, this Methodoku's got no more than 2 blows in one place. Obviously, the 4 has already spent 2 blows in 5th place, so it must move way, and the only place it can go is 4th place. So, you know, we've started and we've done a little bit, but we're a long way away from getting a method out. But and I don't think we can really go any further with the 4. The 4 might go up here, or it might go there, and it might go down here, or it might go there. So we just don't know. So we have to leave the 4 and try and find some other place to pick up the story. And indeed, we've got another clue here, which is the 2. And you can see now there's only one way for the 2 to have reached this position at the back. It must have come down from 5th place. And then we can kind of retrace its steps back through the lead. It must have therefore come from there, must have crossed with a 4, and then it must have crossed with the treble. And so we've got the 2 coming all the way out to the other side of the treble there. But again, it looks like we're then stuck. You know, the 2 could go here, there, There's a bit more we can do at the end, isn't there? Because the 2's then made 2 blows in fifths. It's got to come down to ring in fourth place at the lead end. But again, we don't know whether the 4's going here or there. We don't know whether the 3's going that way or that way. And looking at the first row, though, maybe we can make some progress. 3, 4, and 5. Well, we don't know yet. You know, the 3 could come through here, or the 4 could, so we don't know about them. But the 2's got to swap with the treble, and it's got to lead. And then after 2 blows, it's got to come away from lead. So, you know, we've got that far just kind of by following the clues. Now this is a place where you could get stuck. But, you know, there's some things that are tantalizingly close together now, aren't they? These 2 2's, they're only, you know, 1, 2, 3 rows apart. There's only 2 blank rows. So can we join them up? And the answer is yes. And you might think there's all sorts of ways the 2 can get from here to there. It could go up this way, perhaps. Oh, and then it's going to move down to there. But that works, surely, doesn't it? Making sort of Kent places there. And it turns out, no, that just won't work, because the bell at lead here would have to stay at lead for 3 blows. Can't follow up there, because that introduces this big jump. So it would have to stay at lead for 3 blows, and that's not allowed. So we can't have this seconds place here. That just doesn't work. So I can rub those out. And so really, the only thing the 2 can do next is move to this position. So already that's you know, that's getting tantalizingly close to joining up this path. But you know, where does the 2 go between? It looks like there's 3 spaces. I mean, that middle space, definitely not, because that's 3 blows in seconds place. What about doing a dodge in 2, 3? And again, this doesn't work, because you've got this then work in kind of 2, 3 with the other bell, who's going to be the dodging pair with the 2. That means there's going to have to be a bell making, you know, long lead, 4 blows at lead. So you can't do that. So our choices are really more limited than we think. And in fact, the only place the 2 can go is down to lead. It's got to dodge in 1, 2. And look, we filled in just by that logical reasoning, using our 3 rules of the Methodoku. We filled in the entire path of the second, which is amazing. And now we can do a little bit more with the 4. So sometimes you have to shuttle back and forwards between one bell clue and to the next. And that's kind of what makes a Methodoku fun, isn't it? You do a little bit of progress here, and then you've got to think somewhere else. And you're building up the picture of the method, you know, in like a jigsaw puzzle almost, isn't it? But if we go back to the 4, there's something quite subtle to spot here. And that's the 4 can only come through the treble from the, you know, from the starting position from rounds down from above the treble to below through these 2 transition points here. It can't come down here, because then it's dodging with the 2 on the front, and there's no way it's going to get up to the back here. So that means the 4 can't be the bell on the front. And in fact, the only other bell that's got time to make it down to the front is the 3. So we know that the method starts with thirds. And furthermore, we can pencil in quite a lot of the path of the 3. Look, all the way down here. After the dodge, it's got to make a place. It's got to lead. It's then got to come away from lead. Otherwise, it would be a long lead. And so it's got to pass through the treble here. And to get back down to its final position at the lead end, it's got to make thirds. So it's beginning to come together more quickly now in you. And you can see that we filled in quite a lot of this method now. And there can be no other method that matched these clues. You know, there was nothing else that would match these clues and would work with these rules. So what we got here is unique. And we can quickly finish it off. We can see that, well, perhaps it's not so easy to see. I mean, the 4 looks like it could go through either of these transition points. I think, in fact, that's probably not true. Let's see. I think it could come here, perhaps, and the 5 could come down there, or the 5 could come down there. Perhaps that is true. Perhaps both of those work. But I think we really we really need to look at the 5 coming down through here, because yeah, that's it. Because otherwise, if the 4 made fourths here, the 5 would be 3 blows in thirds, wouldn't it? Yeah. Hopefully that's obvious. So that can't work. So the 4's got to come through this path here. Right, I've convinced myself. Sometimes even the inventor of the Methodoku gets a bit lost in the subtleties of these things. So the 4 has to come up there, and that's the only way that you can get back to rounds without making more than 2 blows in a row. So the 5 then has to come through this path, and there's only one place left for it. And indeed, we have finished the Methodoku, and that's the only solution to that Methodoku. So even though there are only 3 working bells filled in, we can solve it, and there's a unique solution. I mean, that still amazes me, and I've done hundreds of these things. But who knew that bell ringing was like that? So right, I'm going to come back to my share my screen and come back to my presentation. See if this works, swapping back and forwards. Yeah. So of course, all this really came about, you can remember, it seems like a long time ago now, doesn't it? March, January and February, there were some news reports of bad things happening, but life was normal, wasn't it? If you can remember what normality was like. And then all of a sudden, March, the virus was really beginning to take hold, and lockdown happened. And the streets of our towns and cities emptied. It was a very strange time. But in some ways, I mean, it's a horrible time. In some ways, I quite liked it. I was kind of working at home more. I couldn't see my partner, actually, because the first part of lockdown was very strict, and the social bubbles hadn't yet come into play. So I couldn't go and see her. So I had lots more spare time on my hands, and my brain started to think of creative ideas. And I think the other thing that was happening was, there was no ringing. I mean, the ringing started to dry up a week or 2 before the full lockdown. And actually, so one thing I did quite a lot of my time is compose peals and quarter peals. And with no prospect of those being rung, I stopped thinking, I lost some enthusiasm for that, because I do like to see my compositions being rung. That's great. So not only was there no ringing, but no composing was happening in MBDville here. But that gave me...
Just to interject for a moment.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
We're still looking at your Methodokus.
Right.
Do you want to,
right. I will try and change over. Let's see. Right. So can you see me now?
Yes, we can.
Right. Okay. I'll try and share screen a second time. Yeah. Has that worked better?
That is perfect. Thank
you. Good. Right. Sorry about that. Yes. I'm not obviously fully mastering the technology of these kind of 3 or 4 different views that I've got. We will get there. Anyway, so there's the virus, and there's the sign for no ringing and no composing. And here's the ideas that started to bubble up in my head. And the first of those ideas was just some puzzles that I fired through to the Facebook Bell Ringers group. And I think one of the first ones that I remember was this idea of having a battle between call changes and cross changes. So which is better, call changes or kind of method ringing? So and the idea was, if you had 2 musical rows, say rounds and I don't know, reverse Whittingtons or some other thing, which was the quickest way to get to it? Was it with place notation, or was it with kind of call changes? And I put some criteria around the place notation, so you couldn't just do anything, but you had to, you couldn't have lots of bells staying in the same place to make it look like call changes. You had to have as many pair swapping as you were able to. And it turns out, quite interestingly, that some transitions are easier with call changes and some are much harder. So anyway, that was an interesting little puzzle. And I think, if I remember right, that Will Bosworth from the Ringing World spotted this, and he said to me something along the lines of, Mark, could you do some puzzles for me in the Ringing World? Because I'm worried that the Ringing World will run out of peals and quarter peals and articles and stuff about ringing. So I said, yeah, and I've already got lots of ideas about various puzzles, so I'll let you have some. And this is from a Facebook Messenger conversation I had with Will, where I sent him the first Methodoku. I think the first Methodoku I ever invented is this one. And you can see the idea. This was in the 19th of March, so yeah, it was actually a few days before the full lockdown. So I was already thinking about these things, and you can see it's already quite fully formed as a concept there. And I already knew what to call it. I quite like doing Sudokus. I don't do a lot of them, but they are good fun. So that name came quickly to my head. And I suppose where did this concept come from? Because most if you're going to come up with a good puzzle concept, sometimes it takes a lot of work and development, and kind of Methodoku sprang into formation relatively rapidly. And I think I know the reason for that. And I'm going to swap back to my little desktop webcam now, and I'll show you maybe why these things were already in my head. So see if this works this time. Yep, that's good. My webcam needs adjusting a little bit. For a long time, I've been interested in not just composing, peals and quarter peals, but in composing methods, and interested in method structure and things like that. And I think often when you're composing methods or you're solving problems in methods, you're actually doing something very similar to a Methodoku. And I'll give you a couple of examples so you can see. I mean, this is one of the things I looked at years and years back when it started to become obvious to me that Rutland surprise major was a very bad method, because on the front here, it mixes up the tenors and the little bells, and it gives no opportunity for music with either back bells or little bells. It's really horrible for the composer. It's very limited opportunities for any kind of certainly run-based music off the front. And so years and years back, probably in the 1990s, I thought, well, let's see whether we can take, the thing about Rutland is it's Cambridge above, or Yorkshire, as I like to say. So, but it's an F-type method, isn't it? So it has a slightly different half lead. And so I thought, well, maybe it's possible to do something that's nicer than Rutland. I mean, maybe it's already been invented and I don't know of it. But let's take the Yorkshire backwork and the F-type Rutland. It's a London placeable order, isn't it? And see whether we can make a method underneath which has nice music. And you can see here, this is a grid with some numbers filled in, and these are the bits, the blank bits that we've got to fill in. So you can already see the similarities to that and Methodoku. But actually, in this case, it just doesn't work. So in order to get the right lead end, we need to swap these pairs of bells. Let's move that up a bit. So the 7th must be a fixed bell, must make a place to the lead end. The 2 and 4 must swap it to the lead end. The 3 and 6 must swap, and the 5 and 8. So I can already pencil in some bits of my solution. The 3 must swap with the 6, so it looks like that. And actually, this idea of what pairs swap at the half lead controls what happens at the lead end for a symmetrical method. That's a key part of many of later, more advanced Methodokus. And then you can kind of look at this and see, well, I really want a nice big run here. Ideally, if you could have backgrounds here, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? And it's not going to happen in this lead, but it'll happen in some other lead if I get the bells in the right order here. And so actually it just needs to be the plain bob coursing order. So I've got to go 3, 6, 8 here, 7, 5, 3, 2, like that. I've missed a bell out. No, that isn't right, is it? Oh, yes, that is right. But you can see it hasn't worked because I got the 3 twice. And that tells me something's wrong here. What's wrong is I can't get backgrounds with the 6 and the 3 there. So already that's failed. So you think, well, maybe we don't need backgrounds, but maybe we could just get some roll-up off at the front. Get 4 bells in a roll-up position and have a nice roll-up here, or even up here. And so you look at what bells you've got left. So we've already used the 1, 3, and 6. So you've got, let's move this up so you can see, you've got the 2 and the 4 and the 5 and the 7 and the 8. And you've got those to try and make a roll up from. And actually, there's no coursing set of bells there. So 875 is about the largest coursing set that you've got. So you can have a roll up with 5, 7, and 8, but you can't have a roll up in the plain course with 4 bells because you need a coursing set for that. So that just doesn't work here. But obviously, maybe we could get a roll up with 5, 6, 7, and 8, couldn't we? So if we can get the 6 hunting down to the front, and the 8 can come down here, and then the 5, maybe we can make something work. But in fact, if you play around with this, and there's all sorts of possibilities, but none of them work. So that's why there's no good Rutland-like methods. And that kind of thought process and that kind of reasoning where you're filling in the blanks, trying to make something, try and bring the ends, trying to tie some ends up to a known end point. That was in the back of my mind when I invented the Methodoku, because I enjoy that. I enjoy doing things like this. It's good fun, even if it doesn't work out. Plenty of times it does work out. This is a picture of my thought processes when I was composing the method Snow Tiger Delight Maximus, which was around the same time, maybe a little bit later, certainly in the 90s. We rang it in the 90s, I'm pretty sure. And Snow Tiger Delight Maximus, the idea there was to try and come up with a method, a Maximus method, where the back bells stay in coursing order almost all the way through. So in a method like Bristol, you get lots of nice runs and roll-ups off the front and back. But actually, if you listen to it being rung, the predominant musical effect is the back bells coursing down next to each other. So you get 8 and a gap, and then 10 and a gap, and 12 and a gap, and 11. And I'm not a very good singer, so I'm not going to sing that to you. Maybe someone else can volunteer later, but it's a lovely, wonderful sound. And it's sort of the sound of change ringing. And it's repetitive, while that coursing music rolls on and those 4 bells, they course back and forwards through the method. All the little bells are sparkling in the middle. So it's absolutely mesmeric sound, and what makes, to me, ringing on higher numbers so fabulous. So I thought, well, Bristol's lovely, and it's got lots of that coursing music, but the coursing music is broken up because bells stop to make places as they pass through the treble. And actually, there's other places in Bristol where the coursing is broken up. So I thought, can I invent a method that looks as nice and is as fun to ring as Bristol, but has even more coursing music in it? And Snow Tiger was one of the products for that. I've since found many others. And in those days, I still do to a large extent, did all my method hunting by hand. So I'd write out a candidate method like this. And this is an example of a backwork. So I looked at backworks that were particularly musical and kept the coursing bells together. And there were several. So I explored each one of them. And this was one that looked promising. And the backwork is cross 3T, cross 5T, 1-4, cross 5T, cross. And it's a little bit like reverse Bristol, because you can see the 12th, instead of coming straight down to a point, hunting right and then hunting back up wrong, we make a place and we're hunting wrong straight off, and then we go down to point and then back. A bit like Bristol reverse. But the benefit is we've got even more coursing music. So you can see here, you've got the 4, 6, 8, 10 as a coursing 4. And in another lead, that will be the 8, 10, 12, and the 11. And also within this row, you've got 7, 9, ET as a coursing 4, which it means yet another lead will have a beautiful coursing music, and that carries on all the way through. There's actually more coursing music in this opening section than there is in Bristol. But the problem is, how do you make a full method from that? So one idea is you do a double method, and you have that same backwork on the front down here. And that's fine, but then how do you link them up in at the middle? You still want lovely coursing music through the middle. You've got all these gaps, there's 2 full sections here to fill in. And so, I had a wonderful few weeks experimenting with this and finding out which methods you could create. And it's just like a Methodoku. There's a bell here, which is going to be the pivot bell for the quarter lead. And there's only a few choices for what that could be. I think in actual Snow Tiger, it's the 8. As soon as you've got the 8 there, and that's the quarter lead pivot, that fixes a lot of other bells in place. You've got to have then with the 8 fixed, you've then got to have partner bells on either side of it that are in plain bob coursing order to get back to a nice plain bob half lead. So the 6 here has got to be paired up with the 10 here, for instance, so that bell's in place. And so you can work with these and get all the partner bells paired up. There's 6 and 10, the next one is 4 and 12, and then 2 and E must pair, 2 and 11, and 3 and 9, and 5 and 7. So those are the pairs, and you've got to pair them up on opposite sides of the quarter lead, and then you've got to try and link them together in these few rows, and that works. Snow Tiger's out there, it's been rung a few times. Some people don't like it because it's got an ET place notation in it somewhere down here, because there's a 1 2 there, so there's 12 11 at backstroke, but hey, it's a very musical method. Anyway, so it's kind of those ideas and those searches and the fun that I had trying to piece together. I've got to get to here, and I've got to find a way of getting all these bells. It's like knitting somehow. You've got to knit those strands together. And so that was in my head, and I thought, can I make a puzzle out of that will use all these fun stuff that I enjoy doing, but make it accessible to everyone else? And I think that's where the Methodoku came from. And so I experimented with some 5-bell methods and found they seem to work extremely well. For instance, my first one that I sent to Will, which I'll try and get back on screen now. So stop me if that goes wrong, but hopefully that's some sharing back there. So that's where Methodokus came from, and that's where the inspiration of them came from, and they've worked surprisingly well. So Will got them into the ringing world very rapidly. So this is the April the 3rd edition of the ringing world, and these are the first Methodokus to be printed in the ringing world, and the first ones to be published. And people seem to really like them, and that was a lovely thing. And I think, the reason they like them is the same reason that I like inventing methods. I like all the little puzzles of joining things up. But somehow the way they're presented, you don't feel like you're a composer. You don't feel like you have to know a lot about methods. You certainly don't have to have, I suppose, the ideas for what method you're looking for, because you've got the problem stated for you. But those same problem-solving things are there, and people really seem to like that, and that was great. And it's been fantastic to see people, even my friend Jenny Town talks about one of her friends, who I think is an 8-year-old lady, who's a pretty good ringer, but up to now not interested in ringing theory one little bit. But she likes puzzles, and she got hooked on Methodoku puzzles. And because they get harder and harder, and they start to introduce lots of other properties of methods like symmetry, you have to learn about method structure to solve them. And she's gone all the way through right to the hardest of the most fiendish puzzles and learned all about that, even though she had no interest in it before, which is fabulous. Anyway, so and this is obviously the front and back covers of the book, which I talked to Will a month or two back, and said, would you like to put together a book for Christmas? And he said, yes, please. But I'll talk about that a little bit, because that was harder to do than we thought. But first of all, I maybe want to show you a little bit of how I actually go about creating one of these puzzles, because finding the right clues to make a good puzzle looks like it's impossibly hard. And people have asked me, do I use a computer program? And the answer is no. I have thought about writing a program, but I think it would be very hard. And actually, I think the computer may not come up with as good puzzles as a human eye can come up with. So I'm going to show you what I do to invent the puzzles. And there's 2 phases to that, really. The first phase is actually finding good methods to make the Methodoku from. So I'll try and show you how I do that. And of course, one of the really good tools for that is Complib. Complib is wonderful, isn't it? I hope you all use Complib. It's an amazing thing, an amazing tool that Graham John and his son have provided us. And here's how it's useful for Methodoku. So, you know, I might have an idea for next Methodoku I want to do. So it's going to be maybe of medium level. It's going to be a 5-bell method. Maybe it's going to make use of some more advanced rules like palindromic symmetry. So that's the, you know, the vertical reflective symmetry that most methods that we ring has. You know, it gives you nice blue lines, doesn't it, where there's a pivot bell and you can learn half and reflect the other half, or such like. So obviously first of all, I need to find a method that matches the rules I've decided I want to use, or I've got an idea might make a good puzzle. So I go to the advanced search and I choose the stage. So here we go, 5-bell stage. Mostly, I have done some principles and other types of methods, but actually just straight plain hunt methods often work really well. It's nice to have the treble penciled in. And here we go. I'm going to specify a palindromic method. So palindromic symmetry. I'm going to say I want it to have a 4-lead course and to have 10 changes in the course. So that's just a normal plain doubles method. And I'm also going to say blows in one place 2, and that implements the rule no more than 2 blows in one place. So I've kind of specified the methods I'm looking for the rules that I want. And I know from experience that those rules, they give fantastic puzzles. So let's just do search. And again, the other nice thing about Complib now is you can, you know, you've got this list view, but you can also, which just shows you the name and the place notation, but you can also, it can render the blue line for you. So if you're looking for interesting blue lines, you can look through pages of stuff. And look, there aren't actually many doubles methods that meet those criteria. So palindromic plain hunt doubles methods with no more than 2 blows in one place and a 4-lead course, you thought there'd be a few of those, but there aren't, which is interesting to start with, isn't it? And you can look through, and often what makes a good Methodoku is pointy bits. So reverse new bob here with this pointy bit on the front, that looks good. But kind of static work like second place bell here is usually not so good. If you've got, you know, 2 bells dodging with each other for 5-hole pulls or 11-hole pulls or whatever on the front, you know, there's not much interest in that. And in the Methodoku puzzle, you're going to have to give lots of clues, and that's going to make it obvious that those bells are doing a dodge. You're going to need to give lots of clues because, of course, they could be making places instead of doing dodges. There's lots of trivial variation possibilities there. So you can make good puzzles out of them, but they're harder to, you know, do so. But we'll pick this one here. This looks relatively interesting. Stedman bob doubles. It's got some pointy bits on at the front. It's still got a bit of a static work, but we'll see whether we can live without that. Let's have a look at Stedman bob doubles more closely. So it's only the first lead we need to worry about for a Methodoku. So here are the figures, and you think, well, where do you start? You know, which bells do I choose to leave in as clues, and which am I going to leave out? And I guess it's really not obvious what's going to work. But I've got various heuristics and that I use that tend to allow me to hone in on, you know, the best puzzle to make out of any method. And actually, fast moving bits of work like this, you can see the 4 comes all the way from the front to the back. That tends to be useful in a Methodoku because you can imagine if you've got a clue that the 4 is near the front here and it's near the back here, then joining it up becomes more straightforward. You know, if you knew the 4 was at lead there and at the back there's only one path. But even if you knew the 4 was close, you know, it's got to cover a lot of ground. So that would be a good place to start. Also, for a palindromic method, I'm looking to see what happens at the handstroke lead. So here we go. The handstroke lead is 1, 2, 5, 4, 3. And that's critical because the bells at the handstroke lead in a palindromic method are determined by what bells swap and what bells stay in place at the half lead. So you imagine that this first half lead, if you look at the 5 coming down, it follows this path and then it crosses with the 3. because the method is palindromic, that means in the second half of the lead, it must follow back in reverse what the 3 did in the first half. And so it must end up in third place, and vice versa for the 3 with the 5. So at the end of the lead, 3 and 5 must have swapped places, and that's indeed what's happened. You see the 5 is in third place and the 3 is in fifth place. So if bells swap at the half lead, then they're swapped at the handstroke lead end. But the 2 and the 4, they don't swap, they stay in the same place. So they're the pivot bells. There are 2 pivot bells in this method, and they follow their own path back, and so they end up in their own place. The 2 and the 4 are kind of fixed. And that's interesting too, because making use of that is a key part of Methodokos which use palindromic symmetry. And I can kill 2 birds with 1 stone here, because if you look at the 4, its position near the end of the lead here in 4th place is interesting to me. You see, it's not quite at the back, but it's nearly at the back. So it does give a clue that there's maybe a lot of hunting to be done if we know it's come from the front. And also that position in 4th place immediately tells you it's made a place at the half lead. So maybe if we picked out somewhere interesting at the half lead for the 4, we can make a puzzle, you know, from those clues. So that's what my eye would pick out from this method with those heuristics. And I'm going to show you, let's have a look now back at my workspace here, and we'll see whether that works out. So this is Steadman Bob doubles. Again, I've written out the numbers here. It is the same method. You can see I haven't made a mistake or tried to fool you. The 4 is following the same path like that, and it's a pivot bell. It's reflecting its own work. And I think let's try and do what I said was a good idea. So we'll put in a clue here. So we'll say this is a clue with a 4 there. And the idea is we're giving 2 bits of information. 1, it's a fixed bell at the half lead, and 2, it's at the back, and maybe there's lots of hunting to do to get it from the front to the back. And so the other clue we're going to put in is going to be near the front, but not so near it makes it obvious. We don't want to put it here because that would be a bit too easy, wouldn't it? Instead, we're going to put it at the handstroke half lead there. And, you know, those are some nice clues, I think. You know, we've not given too much away. You know, we've said that these bells are quite widely separated, so there needs to be quite a lot of movement to link them up, but it's not like there's only one path to get between here and there. It could come through this way or through that way, so there's some options there. But let's see, my next step, once I've picked on a few clues, is just to look and see how far I can go with solving this. What else can I pencil in? And of course, using the properties of the palindromic method, we know the 4 must make a place, must be a pivot bell at the half lead. So you can fill that in. And then using the other rules, we're going to have the rule, obviously, that there's no more than 2 blows in one place. That's one of the search criteria that I had. And so you can see from that really the 4's got to come back to lead on either side of that second space. If it tried to move anywhere else, you'd have a bell making more than 2 blows at lead, like we saw with that other 5-bell puzzle. So actually, the 4 is forced to come back to lead here by that rule. It may not be totally obvious to start with, but if you think and sketch some stuff out, try and move the 4 to other places, you see that it doesn't work. So that's a pretty good puzzle and pretty good clue. And then we do have this thing where we got this direct connection between the 4 on the front and the 4 at or near the back. So we can link that up. And of course, because we know the 4's the pivot, we can link that up to the start too. So we've actually filled in almost the whole path of the 4. You know, just on those clues. So it's looking promising, but it looks like at this stage I'd have said, well, maybe we do need one other clue. But let's see what else we can do. We can obviously fill in the 2. The 2 must lead, and then it's stuck with the 4, isn't it? So the 2 must stay with the 4 all down through here, nothing else that it can do. And actually, we've said the other thing we want is a 4 lead course to the method. So the 2 can't make seconds, because that would only leave 3 working bells, and the most you'd have is a 3 lead course from that. So the 2 must move into third place. And actually, for the same reason, the 4 can't stay in 4th place; it must move in to 5th place. So we've already completed those paths for the 2 and the 4 just from those 2 clues. So it's looking great. And the 3 must come out here. The 5 must stay fixed. The 5 must move away from the back to avoid long places. And so the 3 must come down through here and the 5 must go there. And the 5's got to swap with the 3 because otherwise there's long places. And that's it really, isn't it? We're home dry. We've got half of the method done. You know, the rest, if it's palindromic symmetry, there's only one thing that can happen. It's got to come down here. There's only one place for those bells to go at the lead end. That's the method, Stedman Bob doubles. And that's a Methodoku created from just 2 clues and just, you know, from studying the figures and seeing which bells have to move a lot, which bells do interesting work, which bells get trapped in certain positions, which bells are near the lead end and maybe we can, or half lead, and we can use some symmetry properties on them. So that's how a Methodoku is created. So I hope you enjoyed that. Right, I think I've just got one other thing to talk about. Let's to go back to me and my final couple of slides, hopefully. Yeah, so the book. I naively thought that it would just be a case of creating some Methodokus and we could publish those. And I was worried, you know, I'd have to create a lot of Methodokus. So to start with, I said to Will, well, maybe we could have one Methodoku on the page and surround it by kind of grayed out copies of itself for working space, and then we could fill up more of the book like that. But actually, we didn't need to do that. I found I got into a real rhythm of creating Methodokus, and you could have a real good go. You know, I'm creating Methodokus for surprise minor methods that have palindromic symmetry and are true in the plain course. And I'm just going to go through and find 3 or 4 interesting, you know, samples of those using that compilib search. And I'm going to make 4 Methodokus, and then you move on to the next lot, D light and treble bob, and maybe do some major methods, some plain triples methods, and well, I got carried away and I created loads and loads of them. But there were 2 problems. One is that the human error does creep in. You know, I check these. I try and make them sound puzzles as I create them. So I try and make it so there can be no other. So the solution works and there's no ambiguity. But sometimes I you know, I'm human. I make mistakes with that. And the other thing is that I think Will wanted a bigger audience for this. So he said, you know, let's try and put some more explanation. Let's try and have a shallower learning curve for it. Still have some hard puzzles in and lots of fun puzzles. If you're a hardened Methodoku solver, there's still lots of really good stuff in there. But kind of start off easy and lead people through, and even try and get a book that maybe a non-ringer could pick up. And so in the end, it took us, you know, a month of work, not doing Methodokus, but actually writing some text and designing the book to be helpful and leading you in. And it's really difficult to explain things clearly in a way that both ringers and non-ringers may understand, and that works, is technically right and helps you with Methodoku solving. And the other thing that happened was we had a playtesting panel. We had 3 or 4 very clever people that Will found who play tested the Methodokus for us, but also Richard Smith enhanced some of his software. He's got a method searching software, and he enhanced that so it could accept the setup and the rules for a Methodoku and search for all methods that matched that. And obviously, if the Methodoku was sound, it would only find one. And so using that, ultimately, we're able to computer prove the soundness of all the puzzles. Some of them were really quite hard to computer prove. The computer, you know, Richard had to do a lot of work, a lot of optimization work, and we had to do a lot of worrying about where points of symmetry were and things like that. But in the end, all the puzzles have been computer proved. And occasionally, the early ringing world ones, there was a mistake in. So hopefully that won't happen in the Methodoku book. And again, it seems to be selling well. But if you want to get yourself a copy, there's 70 brand new puzzles in it, and they're all fab. And just go to the Ringing World website, go to the Ringing World shop, and it's available there. and it's been bought by people all around the world. And as I said, several non-ringers seem to have. There's a guy friend of mine who's at university, and he's flat sharing with 3 or 4 other blokes who are non-ringers but doing like physics and maths and stuff. And he's a ringer, but I think doing an arts degree and not maybe so interested in the techniques. And so he started off doing it, and he kind of enjoyed it a little bit, but was getting a little bit stuck. And his flatmates found it and devoured it. So that's nice. And as I say, there's also ringers who knew nothing or wanted to know nothing about method construction beforehand, and this has got them interested in it, which is, to me, the most wonderful part of it, because it feels like I'm sharing a little bit of the joy and fun that I have when I compose things and I invent methods. It feels like I'm able to share some of that nerdy happiness with the world. So that is very nice to see. Anyway, I think that's the end of my talk. So I haven't bladdered on for too long this time, I hope. So I'll hand the floor back to Dave. Stop sharing my screen, and we'll see if there's any questions or anyone wants me to do some Methodoku creation.
Wonderful, excellent, brilliant. So yeah, there's lots to get through in terms of if people do have suggestions for methods. We've had 3 suggestions in already, but please do keep a few more coming in. There's been a few questions, but please do enter those into the Q&A panel if you've got questions for Mark. I'll just sort of continue on the sales pitch for the book. So as Mark mentioned, it's available from shop.ringingworld.co.uk, and it's 64 pages, A5 format. So it's really easily manageable. You can carry it around. It's got a quick starter section, so that anyone can get going on the puzzle. So it doesn't assume any knowledge before you started. And it's got some illustrations at the beginning to just show you what it all means. A glossary at the back, or a glossary of all the rules. Oh yes, it is at the back, isn't it? For all the rules used in the puzzles, with a worked example, and loads of easy ones to get started. So there you go. It's a fantastic book. I'm in possession of lots of copies of it, which is very exciting for me. And
just to say one more point on that, all proceeds are going to the Ringing World, which I think is really important, because I think, like all businesses, the Ringing World is struggling this year, and supporting them, particularly a business like that which produces something that's so important to ringing, I think. So yeah, so you're helping the Ringing World out by buying this.
Sure. Okay, what we're going to do is I'll just share my screen for a moment. This is where we're, oh, hello, that was exciting. Wasn't expecting to do that. Yeah, so these are the methods which people have put forward. St Nicholas Bob Doubles, Chiltern Treble Bob Minor, and Double Cambridge Cyclic Bob Minor.
Oh, nice.
Two votes for Double Cambridge.
Oh, okay.
So that's potentially good. So if anyone has any more suggestions, please do put them in. Otherwise, we'll come to that in a minute. Let's get through some of the questions that we've had. Mark Norris asks whether the how would this extend to cylindrical ringing?
Oh, well, that's an interesting question. I think just to say what cylindrical ringing is, to my understanding, that's when bells can vanish off the back of the change and come back into the next change at the wrong stroke. So it's pretty tough to ring in the tower, because you've got bells passing through each other to the wrong stroke. But that means you can effectively loop off the back of the change and around to the front, and vice versa. And that would that would be a different kind of Methodoku, because you don't effectively, it's quite hard to write out. You might have some rows with 4 numbers in and some with 6, but but you can imagine designing a grid like that. So you could either put those, some rows being smaller and some rows kind of wider. You could put that there on the page to give a clue about when a bell is moving off the back or moving off the front. And if you did that, I think it would be maybe pretty similar in terms of difficulty of composing and solving to a normal Methodoku. I think if you didn't give that clue, if you just had a blank sheet of paper and you had to work out where the cylindrical bits happened, that would probably be a little bit mind bending. Maybe have a think about that, see if you can come up with one. But yeah, sounds fun.
Wonderful. We've got a message in from somebody who says, I'm a new ringer and only on number 17, but I've already learned a ton about methods, which is very helpful, as she started calling touches and quarter peals. It helps to understand what's going on. So many thanks for the books and puzzles. So and having all of the back matter and explanations and palindromic and all the rest of it is brilliant. So there you go. There's a bit of a commendation from the audience.
Very good. Thank you very much. Yeah.
We've got another question from Nick Elks, and it's quite technical.
Good. So, I'd expect nothing less from Nick.
So it says, can you please demonstrate an example using place notation? For example, if we had completed or partially completed the first change, then we know where places are made in that change. Where else in the grid can we apply that? Is it at the lead end or is it the row before? And can we deduce anything about the half lead from it? And I think the question came in just before the example with the 7 bob doubles. So obviously we've just touched on those issues a little bit in that. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's actually helpful when you're trying to solve a Methodoku to write down the bits of place notation that you found so far. I mean, that's a really useful thing to do. Mostly you do, I mean, and there's some things you can deduce from the place notation. There's something you have to be careful of as well, and that's, for instance, supposing you're looking at a surprise minor method and the first section kind of transit, so the first section end where the trouble's moving from the 1-2 dodge to the 3-4. So supposing that a bell makes fourths there, and obviously a bell's got to has got to be in lead to allow the treble to move up to 3-4. And so you might pencil in 1-4 as the place notation there, and you'd be right, but you've got to remember that there could be, depending on which type of Methodoku it is, it may be that bells could also be making places in 5-6. So the place notation could be 1-4-5-6. So yeah, please do write the place notations in, but be careful. Maybe have some way of highlighting or remembering ones are maybe only partial place notations. You've got the 1 and 4, but there may be other places made further out. So that's something to be wary of there. But yes, the places that are made, I mean, there's some particular applications where that's critical to the Methodoku solving. One of those obviously is what happens at the half lead in a palindromically symmetrical method. And so if you've got a bell making a place at the half lead, it becomes a pivot bell, and at the hand stroke lead end it'll be back in its home position rounds. So that is critical, and so there's all sorts of variations on that. Sometimes I won't just put a bell there. Sometimes I'll put a bell and you don't know whether it's a pivot bell or not. But in surprise major, say, if I put a bell in 7th place at the half lead, then you don't know really. It could be a pivot bell. It could make 7ths, or it could run out down to 6th place. So you don't know. But if I put that bell in 6th place, then if it's a method that's got palindromic symmetry and a 7 lead course, that's actually important, then that bell cannot be a pivot bell. So there's subtle things from the world of method theory that it's useful to know about. And one of those is that if it's an ordinary method, it's not a differential method, and there's not extra hunt bells. So you've got one hunt bell, and on major there's 7 working bells, and they're all ringing the same line. So there's 7 leads in the plain course, and the method is palindromic. Then at the half lead there can be only 1 pivot bell, so only 1 place made, and at the lead end also there can only be 1 place made, so it needs to be a 1-2 or a 1-4 or a 1-6 or a 1-8 place notation. That's the only possibilities. So if I put in a clue that's in 6th place or 4th place or 2nd place at the half lead, that bell has to cross if it's a Methodoka with those properties. So there's cunning things like that, and there's also sometimes I've done puzzles where one of the rules is this is a surprise method. Particularly on minor this works well, and so then for instance, supposing going back to my previous example I gave, supposing you already knew that the first section end was place notation 1-4 or maybe 1-4-5-6, you weren't sure between those 2 yet, and then you're looking further down the puzzle and you're working on the 2nd section end, which is where the treble moves from 3-4 to 5-6. If you remember the rule that it's a surprise method, that 3rd place must be made there. It can't be a 1-6 because that will make it a delight method. So as a surprise method, there's internal places, i.e. not lead and lie, something inside that at both of those section ends. And so you've already got 1, and so the other one must be 3-6. It might be 3-6 or 1-2-3-6, but you can use and actually even if it was a delight method, maybe more subtle the other way around. If you know that the first one's 1-4 or 1-4-5-6, and it's a delight minor method, the 2nd transition is then a 1-6. So there's things like that where the places are vital. So it's probably other things too, but I look for anything sneaky like that to weave into puzzles.
Right, wonderful. I think we've covered off direct questions that people had, but I think it would be wonderful to see another fresh construction.
Yeah, sure.
If you're happy.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you had any thoughts on. I'll just share them again.
I think we'll have a go at St. Nicholas first.
Okay.
Shall we? St. Nicholas Bob doubles, because that's a nice 5-bell method. Should be relatively quick, and then we will, maybe if there's time, if people are still keen, look at the double cyclic, since that got extra votes and it's a cool method. So so I'm going to share back to my desktop cam.
Wonderful.
So here we are. This is a little bit smaller here, so I might have to write this out larger if you can't see it very well. Can you see that, Dave? Can you see the grids that I've got there? No. Sorry, you're muted. You're muted, Dave.
Oh man, I've webinared.
yeah.
I'm at a particular disadvantage because in the production studio,
yes.
the preview of your screen is absolutely tiny. But
well, let's go with it and hope it's visible. Maybe if people can say in the chat if they can't see it. This is just to show you, this is one of the templates that I use when I'm making Methodokas. When I first started doing them, I used to write out these little grids with dots in places of the bells by hand, and actually I still do that sometimes, but I found it's quicker, especially when you've got a whole book to fill of Methodokas, to print out some templates like this. So here are templates for 5-bell methods with the with the treble already filled in. And so looking at St. Nicholas, maybe what I'll do is I'll write in a little bit of St. Nicholas here. So it starts with a 3 place notation, and again, I'm hoping that you can see this. No, it starts with a 3-4-5, doesn't it? I've gone wrong straight away, and then the 5 comes down, and the 5 does this thing in these methods of making thirds and back. You see the 4 is going to do that as well. So a little bit like the other example that I showed you, but the difference here is that we've got just dodging happening on the front, and that's a little bit painful for a Methodoku because I'm going to have to give quite a few clues there, because otherwise it could turn into a place or a point. But actually, what I'm going to do, I have the technology here. I'm going to zoom my camera in closer. Why didn't I think of that before? So hopefully, there we are. You can still see that. So that's the method. Yeah, we're trying to reproduce. Again, it's going to be a little bit messy with my penciled in, but hopefully most of you guys know what St. Nicholas looks like. So let's get my red pen and we'll try and pick out some clues. So I think the first thing I'm going to look at is, well, this whole lot of dodging here at the front. I really want to do something about that. I need to pin that down. I'm going to need to give a clue there to force, what's happening there. And actually, first of all, I'm going to write in the path of the 2 insofar as I can. So the 2's got to come, got to lead, and then it's got to come off second space, because I think it would be best and more interesting if we said no more than 2 blows in one place. So the 2's got to go there, and then we want it to dodge back here. And then we're actually at the half lead. So maybe I don't need to go further than that, because I can use, again, if we use the palindromic symmetry rule, that'll be quite nice. If I didn't use palindromic symmetry rule here, I'm going to have to put in more clues further down here to specify the treble second keeps doing its dodge all the way through. Yes, that is a good point. Peter Hinton has just reminded me that there are 4 blows at the back here. So I can't really use the 2 blows in one place rule. So I'm going to rub that out. Thanks, Peter. You've saved me from an embarrassing blunder. So that makes it a little bit harder, because I am going to have to, the 2 could stay at lead, couldn't it? So I am going to have to put in more clues. But actually, I think the next clue I need is kind of here. So if I put a clue for the 2 in here, no, that's not right, is it? I'm going to need a clue which brings the 2 away from the front. But what I'm going to say is that would make it too easy if I put it there. So let's assume palindromic symmetry and assume we can put that clue in the other half of the lead, which is here. I think it's here. Yes, that's right. And it's actually the 3 that fills that space. So my first clue is going to be the 3. So that's my thought processes here for this method. And then I'm going to assume at this point that I'm going to give some other clues later which are going to pin down the half lead and what the palindromic pair bells are going to be. So I'm going to assume that I know that's the 2 there, but I also need to get the 2 dodging back to the front here. So I either need to put in a clue at one of these places here. And I think I'm going to put in a clue for the 2 here, so it's separated from the other bells. So those are my first 2 clues, and I think that's going to pin down that front work. If I use palindromic symmetry and I can establish through some other clue that the 2 and 3 are pair bells, then that's going to pin down the entire of the front work. And actually, I think it pins down quite a lot of the back work too, because the 3 is going to have to come down here, isn't it? And so I do need to have the 4 and 5 out to the back, but without that nice property of no more than 2 bells in one place, there's actually a lot of freedom for where these bells could be put. And I think actually that's why I use that rule quite a lot, because it's just so useful at creating kind of nice puzzles. But in this one, we're going to have to do something about that. So first of all, let's try and provide a clue that tells the solver that the 4 and 5 have to swap at the half lead, because then that'll avoid me having to give a clue here for this big long, otherwise a bell could make 3 blows in thirds and a bell could make could make fourths there. And actually that's the only other real possibility here. If I give a clue down here which says these bells must swap, then that fixes this bit. So I think, how about we look and say it's the 4 and 5 swapping. How about if we say the 5 is here? So that position of the 5 in 4th place at the handstroke lead says the 5 must swap with the 4. So that says they'll swap not just there, but they swap over at the half lead. But I don't know which order they're going to swap in. So it's either 5 4 4 5, or it's 4 5 5 5 4, and I haven't pinned down which of those it is yet. So I need to give some other clue. Maybe it's time for a clue further up here. I think actually it's 5 coming down this way. I'm going to need to give some kind of clue which fixes these places here. So maybe I'll give that down at the bottom. So we'll say the 4's here. And then we know the 5th by symmetry must make a place, and the 4 makes a place. And then I need to make sure it is the 5 coming down here. So maybe I'll give a clue that it's the 4 that has to move up there. So, yeah, no, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll give it a clue that it's a 5 here, because I don't want the 4 and the 4 next to each other, do I? That looks ugly, doesn't it? So we'll put the 5 here. So that's my other clue. So, and you can see how the loss of that rule, no more than 2 blows in one place, is already causing me to put more clues in, but it'll still make a fun puzzle. So let's see how much we can solve now. So I know what the 4 and 5 are doing throughout virtually the whole of the lead now. I think they have got to swap with each other, because they swap at the hand stroke lead, and so the only way they can come down through is like this. And so at this point, it should be pretty obvious that either the 2 and 3 are partner bells and swap with each other, or they make a place. And actually, I don't think they can make a place, can they? Because that wouldn't be symmetrical here. So the only thing that can happen to the half lead is to swap those 2. And so we've got this as the only thing that can happen. And that's pretty much it done. But I clearly need some other clue or some other rule to fix the backstroke lead, the lead head. I do call that the lead end, this in the Methodoku book. I know many people would prefer that as the lead head, and the hand stroke lead is the lead end. But actually it just seems so ugly saying the last row of a Methodoku is the lead head. It just sounds wrong, doesn't it? So let's have some rule about the lead end. Let's say it's a 4 lead plain course. So let's just quote the rules up here. So it's palindromic and 4 lead course. And there we go. So with those clues, I think obviously the 5 and the 4 can't swap with each other. So the 5's got to come down here, and that, oh, sorry, I'm meant to be doing that in pencil. And so that really fixes what the lead end must be. So just to write that out again, I think the finished Methodoku would be this, with these clues. And I think that's a reasonable Methodoku for St. Nicholas. So yeah, hope that was useful, and that works, and you can have fun. If you do a screen grab, you can go and see whether you can solve that and make it work. So yeah, did you think we should look at the 6-bell one?
Well, I mean, it depends. I mean, obviously people are welcome to stay as much as they like. So I'm certainly very keen to see it work through. Yeah, go on.
Let's do it then. Let's do it.
If you're happy, I'm happy. Yeah. I will just mention that people are enjoying it at home, and they think that you've got a future as a potential Eric Morecambe impersonator.
Right.
Do you remember his famous there was the reading out the football scores.
Oh right, yes.
Was it East 5-4, 4-5-5?
Yes, it's very easy to get tangled over bell numbers and place numbers in a Methodoku. Oh.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I think the audience is very happy.
Right.
Anyway,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So let's go for double Cambridge Cyclic Bob Minor.
Yeah, excellent. Right. So I'm just going to put that up on the screen for you, so you can have a look at it. See whether I can get that up in Complib there. So that's what it looks like, and let's have a quick look at it to see what properties it has. And the thing that strikes me right away is it's a right place method. So you see every other change is a cross change where all pairs swap, and actually that's a nice property that we can use in Methodoku. So we can have a rule which says this is a right place method. And I can see one of my fans there is voting for this method to have its own Methodoku solve, so I'll definitely plow on. I think it's actually a furry fan with 4 legs and floppy furry ears. But hey, one of the consequences of a right place method is you can't have more than 2 blows in one place. So a couple of people have been confused by that and said, well, I tried to solve this, but you didn't say anywhere that there were no more than 2 blows in one place. And my reply to that is, I didn't need to, because it's a right place method. You can't have that. If every other change is a cross, which breaks the sequence of places, then you can only have one place. So we instantly get that rule for free. All I have to say is it's right place, and I get that other really nice rule for free. But the other thing here I notice is it's not palindromic. There is a reason for that, actually, and this is a cyclic method. So as you can see, the first lead end is 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, and so that's really a cyclic rotation of rounds. The next lead end is, or lead head is 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, and then 5, 6, 2, 2, 2, 3, 4. So they're not plain bob lead heads; they're cyclic ones, which give interesting run-based cyclic music. And I was involved in there was a brief flurry of interest in cyclic methods like this again back in the late 90s, early 21st century, I think, which I was involved with. And that's kind of fallen away a little bit. People prefer to ring cyclic compositions with more ordinary methods now, or methods that are designed specially for cyclic compositions, but not cyclic methods. But I think it's still worth ringing them. I think they are still fun. Anyway, so but actually the rule happens to be with some lead heads, particularly the plain bob lead head, that works. You can get a palindromic method out of it. And the reason for that is that in a palindromic method, as we found, this hand stroke lead has to consist of pair swaps. Bells either have to stay the same or they have to swap with someone else. Because at the half lead, they're either a pivot bell repeating their own work backwards to where they started, or they're swapping and changing places with one other bell and ending up where that bell started from. So the hand stroke lead has to be composed of pair swaps or bells staying still. And actually with plain bob lead ends, there's a set of pair swaps that then another change like a 1-2 or a 1-6 will give you a plain bob lead end. But with cyclic methods, there isn't. There's no way, no matter what lead end you choose here, you don't get a row here that's composed of pair swaps. You'll have 3 bells that rotated round, and that can't work with the palindromic method. So we can't use palindromic symmetry, so we've got to get the whole thing going all the way through. But actually, although there is a big block of dodging in the middle, it doesn't cover the whole of the lead. And actually, there is some reasonably fast movement. Looking over here, the second looks a really nice bell, doesn't it? Because it leads and then hunts through the 3-4 dodge, but then goes all the way back to the back. So I think I'm probably going to concentrate on the second as maybe the first one to give some clues for. So let's just change back to my other workspace camera. I need to stop sharing the screen, so you have to remember that. Maybe I'll write it out for us. So let's choose my other one, make sure it's still focused there. So this is my 6 bell grids here. So again, I'm going to use one of these to write the method in. I'll try and do it neatly so you can still pick out what it is. Obviously, it's right place. Every other one is a cross. It's cross 1-4. I hope I'm going to get this right. Cross again, and then it's 1-6. And then it's cross. And we're at the half lead. We've got to go a little bit further, though. This time, it's not palindromic. 5-6, cross, 3-6, cross. And I hope, actually, if you were watching this, this is a good thing to do. This is got a wonderful name, a wonderful old-fashioned name, dating right back from the birth of change ringing. This process I'm doing here is called pricking out. No sniggering it to the back. That's the official name for writing out a method by the figures here. It's got a 1-2 lead end, and it's a good thing to do. Obviously there's computers now, and we can get blue lines and leads and changes on the screen, but still using pen and paper or pencil and paper and writing stuff out by hand, it teaches you more about ringing than any other thing. So I advise it. I write out loads of stuff by hand, even when it takes me ages, and I should probably shouldn't. So anyway, right, let's look at that. That's written out. So let's look at the path of the 2. Let's just do something quite simple here and say, right, we're going to put it at the back here. So we're going to try and force this long hunt out. And actually, we can already pencil in where the cross changes are, because we're going to say it's a right place method. So let's pencil in where the cross changes are. And we can already, even with that as a clue, we already know there's a cross here. So it must come down to that place. But we don't know what happens next, I don't think. So in this next change, you know, we could dodge here. It could be a 1-4 place notation, or it could be a 1-6. So we haven't given a clue for that. We do know how it starts, though. This is how it starts. So maybe we need to give some other clue that joins up those. That would probably be nice, wouldn't it? But before we do that, we'll pencil in where the transitions must be through the treble. So knowing what the possibilities are for where a bell can move from the front to the back through the treble path is important. So can it come up here through this line? The answer is yes. Can it come up through here? The answer is yes, but it would have to make a place. Can it come through here? No, because it can't reach there in time. So there's only 2 possibilities here. I think what I'm going to do, I don't know whether this is going to work, but I'm going to rule this one out here by putting in a clue that blocks it. So let's put the 5 here, say. Okay, so it's not a symmetrical method, so that 5 at the half lead doesn't really tell us anything special, but you can see it blocks out that transition for the 2. So I know the 2 has to come through the treble this way, and it's got to make a place here because of that X. You know, it's a right place method, and again, right place method, so it needs to come down there. But I think there are 2 ways of joining the 2 up. We could dodge in 1-2, or we could dodge in 3-4. Obviously, in the method itself, it's a 3-4 dodge, so I do need to fix that at some point. But let's leave that for now. Come back to it. I don't want to put in another clue for the 2. I want to imply what the 2 does by a clue somewhere else. So let's fill in more stuff. The 5's definitely going to come down through here, isn't it? It could either make 5ths there or hunt down here. We don't know yet. Now, what can the 5 do here? It can come up there. That probably works, doesn't it? I do lots of sketching in little potential paths. With the right place method, there's very much fewer paths. You know, it's just this dodge that can take it to make 5ths. Or it could come down here and make 3rds, and then, well, let's rub this one out for the minute, see whether this even works. Make 3rds. It's got to come up here then. Can it get to 5th place? I don't think that it can it? Because this is a cross. We already know it's 4, 3, 6, 5. I don't think the 5th can go through that transition point. So I think that's good, isn't it? The 5th has to come this way. And so it has to do a dodge there. And so we've already fixed the position of actually lots of other bells, which is, you know, quite cool, isn't it? I think we still haven't fixed the position of the 2. The 2 could still do a dodge in 1-2. That would work. I think the 3 is then going to have to make 3rds and cross with the 6. The 6 would come down. Yeah, that works. So we need some other clue. Maybe a clue down here. Maybe if I say the 3's got to get down to the front, then perhaps that'll then force the 2 and the 4 to get out of the way. So let's look at that. That's what I think of next. I've never done a Methodoku creation live like this, so we'll see whether it works out, but it's all good fun. Maybe if I put the 3 here at the front, that's the safest thing, isn't it? And then there's a cross, so the 3 must have been here. So I don't think that the 2 can come down via that path anymore, because then I don't think. Yes, no, that isn't right, is it? Because then the 3's got no way of getting to here. It would have to stay 3 blows in a place. So that doesn't work. So I think that 3 clue is good. And I think that means the only way the 3's got of reaching there is by hunting through here. And so that is what I'm going to put in. And then we force the 2 to dodge in 5, 6. We fix the path of the 2. We fix the path of the 6. And we've got down to here. Right, so with just those clues, and interestingly here, you can see this is, I quite like this kind of thing, with clues really far down, they're all in the second half of the lead. We've managed to fix the first half. I mean, that's just magical, isn't it? It is a bizarre thing. Clues in the second half of a non-palindromic method have fixed the first half, but not the second half. I mean, how does that work? Well, we've seen how it works, so we understand it, but it's still great, isn't it? Right, so we can't get a lot further here because the 6 could come down to the front, or it could go up to the back. So I do need some other kind of clue in there. I want to keep the 3 and the 4 dodging on the front, and I kind of want the 3 to come out here. Maybe we should look at the lead end and see how we can fix that. So I think I'm going to say it's a 5 lead course. That's always useful. It looks like there'll be too many degrees of freedom if I don't say that. Let's see what else we can do. And yeah, and actually, if I say the 3's here, then actually it has to make seconds then, doesn't it? It couldn't become third place barrel, because then you've only got 4 working barrels, couldn't be a 5 lead course. So I think this 3 here is quite a nice clue. And then it would have to make seconds. And then I think actually I've got the path of the 3 and the 4 fixed. And actually that probably fixes the path of the 6 up to about there. Now, I've still got this little bit to the end to fill in. That's a little bit yucky, isn't it? I want to give, really ideally, I only want to give 1 more clue, but this might require a little bit of thinking, mightn't it? I suppose it might be nice if I had the 6 here. Then it would have to come through, would have to dodge back. Would that then fix the 4 and the 5? Because the 4 could make fourths. There may be a dodge in 3, 4 here, but it could make fourths. You could even, swap with the 2. If the 6 is here, the 6 has got to dodge with the 2 because it can't be 6th place barrel. Again, 5 lead course, but the 4 could still make fourths. But then we've got the lead end 3, 5, 4, 6, 2. Is that a 5 lead course? And it's not, I don't think, is it? Or is it? The 2 goes to 6th place, that goes to 5th place, that goes to, no, it's not. I've been an idiot, because the 4 is making a place, isn't it? So in actual fact, the 4 is either going to have to go here or there. I wonder if we need any more clues. Let's see, supposing the 6 came down here, so that would make an alternative lead end maybe of 3, 6, 2, 4, 5. Does that work? 2 goes to 4, goes to 5, goes to 6. Yeah, that's a 5 lead course. So we do have to have the 6 coming up to the back. How about actually? I'm going to say I kind of don't like the 6 there because it's next to the 2. How about we give a clue on the lead end row? What happens if we say the 4 does dodge back to there? Does that fix things for us? Let's see. It's often the most hardest bit is getting these fiddly bits at the end right. We said the 3 has to be there. Are there things the 2 and the 6 and the 5 could do? We could have something like this, couldn't we? Yeah, it's probably still too many degrees of freedom, I think. Yeah, 2 goes to 5, 6. Yeah, there is still too many. Yeah, there's probably a better solution than this, but for the time being, I'm just going to say it's the 5 here. Yeah, I think that provides a reasonable puzzle. And then obviously the 5 can't come this way; it's got to come that way. So the 6 has to go to the back. The 4's got to dodge with the 5, and the 6th again can't stay in 6th place. Yeah, so there we are. So I think that is a good puzzle. So let's write that in here. So this is the puzzle for Cambridge Cyclic. We got away with specifying the lead end without too many clues, which is always nice. And that's it. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 clues. I think that's a pretty good Methodoku for double Cambridge Cyclic Bob, with the rules, right place, 5 lead course. So there we are. Phew. Hope you enjoyed that. And maybe again, if you want to screen grab that, or maybe I can pass this round later somehow, and you can have a go at solving that. Make sure that if we do that in reverse, if we go from the clues to the final result, then it all still works. There we are. Right. Thank you very, very much, guys. Phew.
Wonderful. Yeah, and we've got a message from Peter, who was one of the people to suggest it, to say excellent work.
Yeah, good. Thank you for that. Yeah, it was getting a bit tricky by the end, but I think we got to the right result in the end, didn't we?
Wonderful. Well, Mark, you've been incredibly generous with your time again, for which we're really, really grateful. I know it's fantastic to see, proper audience participation and and working on the spot. And of course, the EDA only wants 2.5% of any profits you make from those two puzzles. We're
fine. Yeah.
Very generous like that.
Seems very reasonable. Yeah. Anyway. Peter Hinton will be wanting his cut for being one of the two to suggest that. But
exactly, yes. I think that's it. A 1% of the 2% goes to Peter in here. Yeah. Anyway, so, but anyway, you've been really generous with your time. It's great to see, and it's great to hear what a success the book has already been, and we hope goes on to be next year and beyond.
Yeah, maybe there'll be a second volume out, perhaps. We'll see. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, we look forward to it. So just leaves me to say thanks very much, and hopefully we'll see you again.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys, and see you next time.